have expanded a lot. When China began to rework its Arctic policy over the past 20 years, the focus was originally on scientific diplomacy to better understand the Arctic and to better understand how changes in the Arctic were affecting China in regards to climate change and other change conditions within the country. But since, I'd say, over the past 5 years, there's been a much more pronounced focus on not only the economic opportunities that are being presented in the Arctic because of climate change and because of access to resources and shipping potential, but China's also started to become much more interested in governance. The idea that this is a region which is getting a lot of international attention, and China would very much like to participate in future areas of lawmaking and Arctic politics. So we are definitely seeing an expansion and a greater variety of China's interest in the region. And I would say that the Arctic in Chinese foreign policy is not paramount, but it's certainly growing in status. The biggest similarity between China and several other Arctic and non-Arctic countries is the push for scientific diplomacy, the push for greater cooperation in all different kinds of research related to what is happening in the region. So we're dealing with climate change, we're dealing with changes in local biospheres, we're dealing with the problems of pollution, which is starting to become more and more apparent in the far north. So China has been very open to the opportunities of cooperating with Arctic and non-Arctic states to get more information about what's happening. I'd say China's very distinct interest in the region as opposed to other countries that are starting to develop Arctic policies. Because China is a great power, and because China has started to develop cross-regional diplomacy as a focus for quite some time, China's understood that in order to be a great power, and specifically a responsible great power, that it needs to develop a much stronger regional presence in many parts of the world, and that has included the Arctic. Now, on the other hand, China has also really tried to press the idea that the Arctic certainly is under the jurisdiction of Arctic states and is subject to international law, including the law of the sea. But China's also kind of pushing the idea that, okay, there's some aspects of Arctic governance that really should be open to international participation. China's not alone in that. We've seen Arctic policy papers from Japan, Germany, the UK, and France that have all suggested that, yeah, we should have a greater say of what's happening because we've seen more and more evidence that what is happening in the region is affecting us. But because China is a great power and because China is such a major international player, that's the country that's getting most of the attention. The short answer to the question would be no, that China is well aware of the fact that it is under a microscope in the Arctic and its Arctic policy. And if you look at China's white paper on the Arctic, which was released by Beijing in early 2018, there was a great deal of focus on the idea that, yes, the Arctic states should have jurisdiction over their Arctic territories. But non-Arctic states should have the right to participate in scientific and economic activities. Beijing has also made it very clear that it recognizes the law of the sea as applying to the Arctic Ocean like everywhere else. It has also been very active in new agreements relating to Arctic governance, including the Polar Code on civilian shipping and the recent fishing ban in the Central Arctic. So China has been very careful not to give the impression that it's trying to be a revisionist power that is trying to assail international law in the Arctic. In regards to cooperation, far and away, the most important partner for China in the Arctic has been Russia. Russia is very determined to develop its Arctic land. So I'm talking about Siberia and the Russian Far East, for economic potential that includes oil, gas, shipping, and related infrastructure. Because of the political situation post-2014, so Crimea and Donbass, it's been very difficult for Russia to develop partners in Western Europe and other parts of the West. So China has been the major development partner for Russia. So the two countries very much need each other for their respective Arctic policies. But China's also been interested in developing partnerships with other Arctic states. Here in Norway, a free trade agreement is being negotiated. China has one with Iceland. China's very interested in mining in Greenland. and potentially shipping throughout much of the Arctic Ocean. So China is very interested in partnership building. Most of the major collaboration between China and the United States in the Arctic has been through organizations such as the Arctic Council. So the US is a member, China is an observer, and there has been quite a bit of discussion about cooperation and coordination on various areas of scientific interest. However, over the past year, the United States has begun to rework its Arctic policy, saying that the big problem is great power rivalry, specifically pointing to Russia and China as adversaries. This, unfortunately, has sent a very costly signal to Beijing that cooperation between China and the United States will be more difficult. And it may complicate a lot of potential joint research at a time where, the more the merrier in terms of understanding what's really happening in this part of the world.